research into responsible corporate behaviour, the CEO of a global telecoms company made a casual remark I've never forgotten. He said, "Even if my salary was halved, I wouldn't notice." His words have been rattling around my head ever since the controversy surrounding RTE and Ryan Tubridy ignited. Like brittle tinder awaiting a spark, the Tubridy incident is merely a tipping point, focusing anger on corrosive behaviour that's not confined to RTE, but part of a pattern that dominates corporate life, with implications for all of us and for the future of life on Earth. Because while the shenanigans at our national broadcaster were being unearthed, Earth was experiencing the hottest day, the hottest week, and the hottest month in human history. The deadly pattern is extractivism, the policy of mining something, everything, even to the point of killing it. To those narrowly focused on the short term and blissfully unaware of our systemic reality, extractivism makes complete sense. Day to day, it plays out as individualism, the individual presenter, the individual agent, CEO, company, nation, whatever. When you see yourself as separate from larger systems, the logic of extractivism works because it works for you. Until, of course, it doesn't. And it doesn't work, not in the long run, because in reality, there are no individuals. Everything's connected. We're all embedded in larger systems upon which we absolutely depend. And in the living world, the unit of survival is not the individual, but the individual in its environment. Ultimately, every other strategy fails. That's what Darwin's theory of evolution teaches us. It doesn't really matter that our current form of economics says otherwise. It doesn't matter that we live inside the cult of more is better. Nature works the way nature works, regardless. Referring to the star system, one politician asked, "How has RTE made gods of a small number of its workers?" The star system is a human error, rooted in the same systemic blindness, and it's not unique to RTE. Like an invasive species, star logic has colonized corporate thinking, expressing itself in the growing gap between the stars and everyone else. According to the Economic Policy Institute in Washington, D.C., in 1965, the ratio of CEO pay to the average worker was 20:1. In 2021, it was 399:1. In other words, the average CEO in corporate America now earns in a year what the average person earns in a lifetime. And across the world, inequality is surging as personal deals become a global pattern. Oxfam reports that over the past 2 years alone, the richest 1% bagged nearly twice as much wealth as the rest of humanity combined. These can sound like statistics about some other people, until a living systems lens reveals that this pattern is playing out in a workplace somewhere near you. This sucking up of resources from the many to the few has real-world consequences. In RTE's case, Emily O'Kelly, protesting on behalf of the staff, recited those impacts. "We're constantly told there's no money," she said. "People can't get crews. Remote controls in the newsroom don't work. People are working on 0-hour contracts. People are working on bogus self-employed contracts. People are working without maternity or pension or sick pay entitlements. And there are continuous calls for pay restraint because there's an existential crisis, we're told. And yet, there's no crisis for a star in receipt of an already totally exorbitant salary. But this story is so much bigger than Ryan Tubridy. The same extractivist logic that's eroding organizations from the inside is devastating the larger systems in which they operate. For decades, it appeared that the logic of more and more was working until suddenly it's not. And we find ourselves overwhelmed by tipping points. The breakdown of the planet's climate, the collapse of its biodiversity and ocean populations, rampant pollution, all of it driven by a logic that's now so endemic and pervasive that it's brought an entire planetary system to its knees. A living system dies slowly at first and then rapidly. At first, we don't notice the decline because complex systems send weak signals, but deep down, its capacity is eroding and its ability to sustain itself is weakening. And as with RTE, an inciting incident can light the spark that takes down an entire system, sometimes overnight. The star system that often surrounds human endeavour is a man-made illusion. The truth is, we are radically interdependent and everyone's contribution counts. That's why inequality gnaws at our bones, quietly eroding social trust, the necessary precondition for all collaborative human effort. If we want our social systems to endure, then fairness and equality must prevail. To wave this away as idealistic or unrealistic or some form of latter-day Marxism is to admit ignorance of powerful system dynamics at work. To borrow an old Montrose mantra, no one is bigger than RTE. Nothing is more important than the whole system, whatever the system, and no individual should be allowed to undermine it, ever. Real leadership is about making choices that maintain healthy human and natural ecosystems, always conscious of our duty of care for the well-being of those systems upon which our own well-being absolutely depends, places we'll never know and people we'll never meet. And in complex human systems, this leadership is not confined to those at the so-called top. Like the RTE Director General who said no to his job's full salary, or the sports pundit who gave back part of his because he too felt overpaid. We can each exercise the principle at the heart of life itself, the principle of enough.